Ahead and reconvene the public session. At 7 o'clock, we'll have a report of actions taken in closed session from our city attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council and public. There were 3 properly agendized closed session items, 1 dealing with labor negotiations, 2 dealing with litigation. Council was updated in all of them, but no reportable actions under the Brown Act were taken, so there's nothing to report.
All right, thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance with Councilmember Hannah, and then if you'll remain standing for the invocation following that. And at this time, I'd like to call forward Tyler Snow from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to do our invocation for us this evening.
Our dear and gracious Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this blessed day that we would be here together as citizens of the city of Norco. We thank Thee for the city council, and we ask of Thee that their decision-making may be wise, and that they may be inspired in how they lead our great city and the people within it. And we ask these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
All right, we have 2 proclamation presentations this evening. The first one, we are going to be recognizing September as Hispanic Heritage Month by presenting a proclamation to members of the community who have contributed to the economic, cultural, spiritual, and/or political development of our city. So at this time, so I make sure and leave enough room, we have 2 presentations. The first one is Florencia Mariachi Academy. They're going to come up and play a song that is a celebration of Hispanic culture and heritage. So if they'll go ahead and come up, the mariachi, for their presentation. And you guys can come into the center right here behind the podium. Folks, remain up here. And now we are going to call up our 2023 National Charro and Escaramuza competition competitors to show us what they are all about. So if all of you guys will come up, and we're going to fill in up here as well. And I know there's a video presentation for this, and then we'll do our proclamation. So if the Charro group wants to come up, everybody come up. Don't be shy.
Carrera was created in the 16th century when Spanish conquistadores brought horses and cattle to the Americas. The large hacienda fields in Mexico provided a perfect landscape for the sport, and agriculture and cattle raising shaped the culture of the charro. Each year, the Mexican Federation of Charreria holds its national championship for youth charro and escaramuzas in Mexico. This year's 30th national championship competition was held in Arena San Marcos in Aguascalientes. Over 50 teams from Mexico and the United States participated in this year's national competition, 2 years from the city of Norco. In order to be allowed to participate in Charreria, the Charro has very strict rules to follow for the tack he uses and the outfit he wears. Pride, dignity, and gallantry are the main elements to wearing a Charro suit. Dressing as a Charro goes beyond fashion and tradition. Wearing an authentic suit talks about one's culture, roots, and Charro competes with his team and is also eligible to compete as an individual in the Charro Completo competition. These competitions are governed by a 115-page rule book set by the Mexican Federation of Charreria and consists of 9 scoring and equestrian events staged in a particular order.
An Escaramuza Charra team is comprised of 8 women riding side saddle and dressed in colorful dresses. Each team is given 8 minutes to perform 12 mandatory exercises with the precision riding techniques and intricate routines. These routines include dangerous crosses and quick turns. It's almost like dancing on a horse.
Charreria has become one of the most representative traditions of the Mexican culture. Corona USD students who competed in the 2023 National Charro and Escaramuza competition in Aguascalientes: Adrian Betancourt, Alejandro Campos, Angel Delgado, Luciano de la Hoya, Francisco de la Hoya, Caitlin Dulco, Luis Flores, Nadia Juliette Gutierrez, Joaquín Pérez, Andrea Yáñez, Héctor Yáñez, y Jorge Yáñez. Being a charro or an escaramuza is about honor, tradition, family, and pride. These young boys and girls are proud Americans who embrace both our American traditions and their Mexican heritage.
All right, so when we think about Norco and Horsetown, USA, we've got some very outstanding students and young people representing us, not just here in Norco, but internationally. So I'm so proud of what these young people have done, and that they've represented Norco so well. So glad that we can honor them this evening while we do Hispanic Heritage Month. So I'm going to read the proclamation. City clerk is going around. She has a copy for every single one of you to take. And once I'm done reading, we're going to go ahead and take a picture with everybody. And so we'll have to rearrange a little bit so we make sure we can see everybody in the picture. So, whereas every year Hispanic Heritage Month is recognized to celebrate the contributions, diverse cultures, and extensive histories of Latino and Hispanic Americans whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. And whereas in 1968, President Lyndon B. Johnson recognized Hispanic Heritage Week beginning on September 15th, which included the independence days of several Latin American countries. And whereas in 1988, President Ronald Reagan extended the observance to cover a 30-day period and designated September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month. And whereas since 1988, every American president has designated September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month and endorsed a specific theme. And whereas the 2023 theme entitled Todos somos Samoa Una, we are all one. And again, I apologize for my lack of Spanish, reinforces the diversity inherent within the Hispanic Latino population, as well as the power that comes from being a united community. And whereas the city of Norco recognizes its local Latino and Hispanic history and reflects on the strides we have made to ensure all citizens feel accepted and included. And whereas the city of Norco is a diverse community that is honored to celebrate the history and legacies of Latino and Hispanic community members who have contributed to the economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development of our city, state, and country. Now, therefore, I, Robin Grunmeyer, Mayor of the City of Norco, on behalf of our entire City Council, do hereby proclaim September 15th through October 15th, 2023 as Hispanic Heritage Month in the City of Norco, where all citizens, past, present, and future, are respected and recognized for their contributions to our community. And again, I cannot say enough how incredibly proud we are of both of the groups that have come here today to represent our community. And again, thank you all for being here this evening. And now we'll get you guys all reorganized for a picture. So tall ones towards the back, shorter ones towards the front, please. All right, Councilmember Bash has asked for an encore, so I think they're getting ready for one more song for you guys.
Hi, we're at NC Mariachi Academy. We're here in the we're nonprofit mariachi school in the city of Corona. We're honored to be here today. These are some of our students that represent the city of Norco as well, and the schools of Norco and Corona Norco Unified School District. So this is just a quarter of some of the students that are in our academy, and so we want to say thank you to the city of Norco for having us. Thank you. Que resuena fiesta la fiesta charra, fiesta del sol. No. Que los arroz valientes dan con su canto la evocación. Hay peón su vestido que huele a surco y tradición. Remedio en la faena, masa mirada de mi nación. Bonito es el jaripeo y cuando es su animación. Y yo quiero montarme un toro pa' que me mire mi amor. Upayu, 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 upayu. Y yo quiero montarme un toro pa' que me mire mi amor. Ya. Como son jaripeo, la gente aplaude con emoción. Y un tono viene rodeando muy bien coleado por Don Abón. Ya. Pétalan un toro pa' que lo monte Don Filemón. Y mientras sus lazadores corrían la rieta con gran primor. Bonito es el aripeo y cuando es su animación. Y yo quiero montarme un toro pa' que me mire mi amor. Upayu, 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 upayu. Yo quiero montarme un toro pa' que me mire mi amor. Upayu, 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 upayu. Yo quiero montarme un toro pa' que me mire mi amor. Ay, ay, ay. Gracias.
All right. Great job. Thank you. If we can have the mariachi come into the well, we'll take a picture with the council and the mariachi, and then we'll switch out and let you guys get a group picture for the other one too. Yeah, just sorry, come up so we can take one more picture with the council and the mariachi, and then we'll switch out the groups and then please don't feel obligated to stay for the whole meeting. Please, it won't. All right, let's give our mariachi one more big round of applause. All right, so now our other group, if you guys want to come up, so we'll get a picture of you guys with council. We'll stand on our tiptoes, or if some of our taller folks like Hector and Joaquin can stand towards the outer edges so you guys don't cover the short people up here in the middle. And thank you guys for coming, and thank you for representing Norco internationally. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on to our second proclamation. So tonight we are recognizing September as National Preparedness Month by presenting a proclamation to members of the community who have contributed to the economic, cultural, spiritual, and or political development of our city. At this time, I would like to call upon our CAL FIRE chief, or who's coming? Chief Otterman on my list, and then I have Riverside Emergency Services Coordinator Bryce Bartlett coming up, and they are going to present information on the importance of being prepared in an emergency, and they will be receiving the proclamation on behalf of our community. So if you guys want to come stand behind me, that way. Read this one. So, whereas National Preparedness Month is observed each September to raise awareness about the importance of preparing for disasters and emergencies that could happen at any time, and whereas educating our community about National Preparedness Month will increase awareness and build an understanding of the types of disasters that could happen in our community, and whereas the 2023 theme for National Preparedness Month, entitled Take Control in 1, 2, 3, will focus on preparing older adults for disasters, specifically older adults from communities that are disproportionately impacted by the all hazard events which continue to threaten the nation. And whereas we know older adults can face greater risks when it comes to the multitude of extreme weather events and emergencies we now face, especially if they are living alone, are low income, have a disability, or live in rural areas. And whereas the city's partners, including CAL FIRE, Riverside County Fire Department, Riverside Emergency Management Department, Riverside County Sheriff's Department, and Norco College, are working to increase opportunities to teach residents how to prepare for emergencies and be ready to act following a disaster. Whereas emergency preparedness is the responsibility of every Norco resident, and all residents are urged to develop and plan and prioritize preparedness so that we are equipped to work together to ensure that residents and their animals are ready for emergencies and disasters. Now, therefore, I, Robin Grenmeyer, Mayor of the City of Norco, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim September 2023 as National Emergency Preparedness Month.
nervous though after that great performance with that. So, I wasn't nervous until then, and now I got to follow that. So I don't know how I'll do. Well, everybody, thank you for letting me come here and talk to you real briefly about the National Preparedness Month. I am with the Emergency Management Department here in Riverside County, but brief background on it. In 2021 was the initial conception and campaign for National Preparedness Month. As you heard the proclamation say from the mayor here in the city, is that really they're looking at those people within our communities that would be the most impacted during a natural disaster or a man-made disaster throughout that. So, you know, the first was Prepared to Protect. Last year was a lasting legacy as we developed these things. And then, of course, this year, as I said, Take Control in 1, 2, 3, really focusing on the aging population within the United States of America. So, real quick, I'm not going to stand up here for 30 minutes or 2 hours and lecture you on preparedness, okay? I'm up here for 5 minutes just to kind of hit the wave tops and give you some places to go look and start thinking about. So what is the importance of preparedness, okay? Very important. We never know when the disaster is going to strike, right? So what are the 4 pillars of preparedness? That's what another thing we're going to talk about. Talk about some of the technological and social media outlets that are out there. I'm sure all of you are aware of all of them that are out there. I don't even know. There's so many now in social media. And then how important community collaboration is. And the people sitting in this room obviously care about collaboration and bringing partners together. So, importance of preparedness. We don't know when disasters strike. You don't know when the electricity is going to go out to your house. You don't know when that 7.0 earthquake is going to come, because we got 2 major fault lines around here, right? We got the Elsinore fault line that's just right down the road here, and then we got what everybody likes to talk about this out there is the blank right now, the San Andreas fault line, blanked on that. But Lake Elsinore, the Elsinore fault line, most people do not think about this, but it does have the capability to produce a 6.8 earthquake, which we recently saw what the devastation that could be over in Turkey and in Morocco. Right? So think about that. And you got to protect yourself and your family and the loved ones, right? Some of us that are a little bit older are prepared, but we also have to look out for those that do not have the ability to prepare, right? Young children, or maybe some people with disabilities, things like that. So we always got to talk about our access and function in these communities. And then, of course, build a real more resilient community. Because if you can prepare to yourself, it is going to free up resources for my brethren in the back that really come out to do the response activities and save lives. Our fire department, our sheriff's department, our medical. So it's important to be prepared so that our resources don't get overwhelmed and they can go to the most critical places that are needed. So what are the 4 pillars of preparedness? First and foremost, get educated. Know what's in your area, okay? And I'll talk about a couple things to get educated. How can we do that? You can go and look at your local hazard mitigation plan. That's one thing to start with, which is open source on the city website. The second place you can go, if you like to go on the internet, you can actually Google My Hazards, which is a California Office of Emergency Services website where you can actually plug in your address and it will tell you the hazards that are around you. Another one that's out there, it's called the FEMA Resiliency Analysis Planning Tool. If you Google FEMA Wrapped, you can go there and it's another web-based thing where you can put in multiple layers. It's using a geographic information system. You can put in your address. You can put in different layers there. You can put in fires that have happened in the past, flood layers, all of these things, earthquake layers. You can do all of that there. So it's getting to know what hazards are locally within your area. So that's getting educated, right? That's going out there and doing those things. Number 2, make a plan. You got to make a plan. If you don't have a plan, you won't have a direction to go, right? And every plan will change once something happens. You know, the best laid plans, once contact happens, they disintegrate. But you're at least in that direction. So make that plan. Make that plan and talk to everybody about it. Where are you going to communicate? What's your communication plan? What's your exit plan? What's your link up plan? What are all these different plans that you're going to have? And then after that, you build that kit. In building that kit, you can go out there, vote this, make a plan, and to build a kit, you can go to ready.gov. And that is the FEMA national site, and it's got tons of information there. A lot of information. They'll tell you how to make a communication plan, how to make exit plans, how to build a kit, and what should go inside of your kit. But I want to stress this to you. Only you know what goes in your kit. What's important to you needs to go in that kit, but we also look at some things like we want to have extra water. We want to have extra food. We want to have a radio in there that we can listen to the weather station because, and I will get into this later a little bit about alert warnings and stuff, but so you can get information that's coming in, right? So you can stay informed. You want to have your pertinent documentation that is important for you. Your insurance documentation is the number one thing you want to have in there, as well as other documents, and I recommend putting them on a USB or some type of hard drive so you grab it and you go. Also, some safety glasses, other things in there, but won't, because I'll keep it short, I'm going to go into it, but make a plan, build a kit, and go to, what's it called, ready.gov, and there's tons of information there on everything. And then, number 4, get involved. And everybody in this room sitting in a city council member or city council meeting because they care about what goes on in their community. So, number 1, you're already getting involved. But there's other things to do out there. Norco has an extensive community emergency response team program that teaches everything, goes very in depth on a lot of this stuff, and gives you a lot more information. Get involved through them. But that's not the only way. There's a lot of organizations out there that are also called volunteer organizations active in disaster that do a ton of stuff for the community when they're in need. The American Red Cross is our number 1 that everybody knows. The Salvation Army, which feeds a lot of people when we need to do sheltering operations. And then there's also an organization out there called Team Rubicon that was formed by veterans that really focuses on debris removal and doing that. So there's a lot of ways to get involved within your community, but as I said, you're already here and you're staying involved. So technology and social media. Let's kind of talk about that real quick. Can anybody here tell me, how do you get notified if there's an emergency or there's an event in your neighborhood? Your cell phone. Okay. What do you Google, see what's going on? Okay, comes directly from Great Point. Anybody else? Okay, ready.gov, another one that will send alerts to you. So how do we get that? That's emergency alerts and notifications, okay? We've got 2 types. You can get what we call opt-in, which the gentleman over here just talked about. City of Norco has the NICSO program, and they can send out messages, whether it be for emergency or community, just community events going on. I'm signed up with them too, so I get them once in a while as well. Okay, that's an opt-in. Riverside County has an opt-in program too, where they will send you updated information on alerts warning. But there's another one that you don't ask for and everybody just gets it, right? And it comes in on your cell phone and makes this annoying noise, okay? That is what we call a wireless emergency alert, or a WEA, as we call it in my profession. A wireless emergency alert. And what that is that is a geofenced message that goes out to the cell phone towers. And if you're in a certain geographical space that they've set the boundaries to, you will get that message. And those are only sent out when there's immediate life threat or immediate threat to life and property. Okay? Them are the only times you're going to get them. So know if that phone rings and it's one of those type of alerts, there is an imminent threat to life and property. So make sure you take a look at it. So them are the 2. I wanted to talk about the 2 differences between the opt-in program. The opt-in program is going to give you a lot more information, whereas the WEAs, the wireless emergency alerts, are only going to give you a very truncated amount of information because of the way they're formatted. You can only send out so many characters, and you're limited to 90 characters. So make sure you're signed up with your cities and also with the counties so you can get that. And then there's also your social medias, right? Facebooks, Twitter, formerly known as X, and the city website. Okay? Want to scan it real quick? That is to sign up for the Alert Rivco. All right. And then last thing, community collaboration. All right. It's important that local government, community-based organizations, our faith-based organizations, private businesses, and those in the room, we all interact together. That's very important because without all of you, we can't build that resilient nation. So that is the key to everything. And I'm going to wrap it up right there. I appreciate everybody, and thank you very much for recognizing. Have a great.
Okay, so we're gonna do a picture because it's a proclamation. So if we can have all of our public safety folks in the back come up, we'll do a picture. I know Deputy Cooper is super pumped. Look at him. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move into our regular agenda. Thank you for the proclamations and for everybody being here. We certainly appreciate it and how fun it has been to do the presentations this evening. So with that, item number 1, our city council reports on regional boards. We are going to start with Mayor Pro Tem Bash.
I think the only thing I'd like to relay is that I met with Steve Hemingway, the Riverside City Councilman, over at Riverside's neighbors on Wood Streets. There were about 60, I guess there were 67 people there. And there's a lot of people that do not want the undergrounding, and it was interesting. They really made their voices known. We had a council person there that's been consistently voting for the above grounding. And it's a very different meeting. It reminded me of the old days here in Norco when people were really riled up. So I think that was a good thing. And I guess the next day a whole bunch of letters went out to various people. So it was good. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Alleman.
Nothing to report at this time.
Great. Councilmember Hannah.
Nothing to report on the county meetings this time, but on September the 12th, we did the ribbon cutting at the Round Table Pizza. Very nice food, very good place, good location. And on Saturday, we went to the ribbon cutting at the new Juice It Up. It's over by the River Road, over by the State of Brothers Center. That's all I have.
All right, Councilmember Newton.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see. Well, last week, Board of Directors meeting for the Chino Basin Desalter Authority. And then Mayor Pro Tem Bash and myself met with the press enterprise out at Hidden Valley. And we walked and talked and did all that good stuff. And then we had a pretty positive news article that came out afterwards. And then also today, even though I was late, we did have another RP meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, and I have nothing to report at this time, so we're going to go to item number 2, which is our consent calendar. Are there any members of the council that have items they would like to be pulled?
G.
G as in Greg. Okay. Any other items to be pulled? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Oh, I'm sorry, public comment cards.
We have no public comment.
Okay, now, sorry, council member. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 3, which is going to be our items pulled from consent. So that's going to be 2G, and that is going to be Councilman Newton.
Thank you. This one troubles me a little bit, and I'm not sure, it's maybe not Lisette, it's more city attorney or city manager type question. So on page 88, in the second paragraph, says the owner is refinancing the original loan, which is now due and payable through Wasatch, right? In the amount of approximately $4 million. If not refinanced, the owner has indicated that the current lender will foreclose and shutter the facility and wipe out the RDA loan, which is behind the original loan. So I kind of feel like it's, once again, this is a, an apartment developer, builder, trying to back us into a corner. That if you don't do this, the bank will just shutter the facility and we'll throw all the senior citizens out on the street. So where is the statement of fact that, how do we know this was a statement? Was it a phone call? Was it written? How do we have this information that that is what they're either stating or, yeah, that would be their statement of fact?
Councilmember, I'm not sure, and Lisette did work with John Harper on this item most closely, so perhaps they've had that conversation.
So we're up against it already. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so I was working with John and Colin on this.
Okay.
I know earlier last year they were in talks of actually selling. So they were trying to sell the property, and then, so I don't know how, if that's how they were trying to, they sell them and be able to pay off both the original loan and our secondary loan here. And then that was sort of put on hold, and they said, oh, it's gonna be 3 more months, and then they contacted us now that they want to refinance to come to basically be able to pay the original on time as well as this.
And if I may add more
Yeah.
globally on these housing, affordable housing deals that were made years ago, and Mr. Curley can also elaborate, not with regard to this, but it is very common for these original owner or operators, developers to refinance the loan. And it is very common for the cities, the redevelopment agencies note to be subordinate to that first loan. So that's a typical arrangement. It's not a strange arrangement. And often they're refinancing because the properties are aging and they do require reinvestment. So I don't know that that's what's happening here, but sounds like that's what's happening. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, I know when they started reaching out was after the fire that they had, so I don't know.
Yeah, so they probably have
And it took them a while.
improvements to do as the property has aged. So it's not uncommon. And I know, Mr. Curley, this is new to you, but if you have any light to shed on council member's question, that's welcomed.
This itself is new, but this business structure is not new. Any redevelopment agency remainder property, so to speak, those were originally touched before they took my beloved redevelopment agency away, is structured this way. The cities and the agencies serve to undergird the economic potential of a project. in doing so, you were usually using 20% set aside money, which was dedicated to such uses, housing and senior housing, veteran housing, whatever it may be. Subordinating those earmark funds to a developer to do a project is exceptionally normal. I mean, I've not really seen transactions done differently. Assuming 20% money, that's what its purpose was to undergird good housing, whether it be directly through the housing or the redevelopment agency in conjunction with the housing authority, in conjunction with developers. That was all money earmarked to do housing. And because the only goal of it was to protect it, you didn't really plan to get it all back. You wanted to keep it out in the community, providing that housing. So you subordinate it. You let the more active players, the developers, the banks, do their thing, but you've in essence subsidized or brought down that transaction. So, I mean, the good news is this is such a, I won't say rubber stamp, it's so common a business structure that you probably never would have done otherwise historically. That's what the redevelopment funds went to. Currently, as staff noted, those units, not these particularly, but they're getting old, they're getting tired, they need rehab. There is typically then a refinancing of the first, which you can consider it backing us into a corner, or you can consider it holding us to our original word of being there to help the housing by your economic contribution. So in the overall, this is as normal as can be. And
You know, that I understand. My problem is, and nobody's answered my question yet, is where is the backup that made this statement a fact that says this is what they will do? That they'll shutter the facility and wipe out the RDA loan if we don't agree to this.
Listen, I think this staff report came from Colin.
Okay.
Yeah, I work with.
So
Colin,
I don't know.
I could get back to you on that.
I don't know. I just feel uncomfortable with it. It's like, this has got to be the worst time in our history to refinance a loan. So it makes me think that these guys are on shakier ground than it seems. And also that with the RDA, you know, I understand this. That money was lent in 2007. So it's 15, 16 years ago to rehabilitate those buildings. So I guess what I'm trying to get to, other than this is just standard stuff, rubber stamp it, is there any way that we can put ourselves in a better position?
well, I'll first, since I don't know this deal, I can't tell you an exact answer, but I can guess pretty well. If you look at the second page, this owner's refinancing.
Correct.
That action is the trigger that brought all this forward. Probably whoever they're doing the new financing with is putting terms in, especially with inflation and everything we're facing, to say you're either going to live with these terms, this new business arrangement, this new loan, or you're not going to get a loan. And if they don't get a loan, that then leads to all of these harsh results, the closure, the things you've noted. So they may not, or may have, I honestly don't know, have directly said it, but it's sort of a connect the dots necessary reaction. If there is a first that is being called, is due and payable, and they can't, and they have to go get new financing, just as any of us go to get a loan, you're going to get terms and conditions. You either live with the terms and conditions. I'm kidding. Talk to
I was just going to suggest, I hear what you're saying, but I was going to say maybe we can hold this item, Mayor. Let me see if I can go get a hold of Colin, get some information, and we can come back to it. Is that okay? Does that sound good?
Was time of the essence on this? Can
my
we just
understanding
continue it to the next meeting?
My understanding is that it actually is of the essence. They had hoped to have this done previously. So Lisette, is that your understanding too?
Yes, my understanding is that they expect to close in October, so they need it by the end of the month to get approved.
And I would just leave it up to my colleagues to make the motion and decision. I think
Well,
it's best.
Does council want to hear from Colin before making the decision and send a message to him and see if we can get that back before the end of the meeting and just drop this to lower on the agenda?
Well, when I read this, they want to refinance, but because our redevelopment agency, right, loaned them money, that's the only reason that we're involved. So if they, as a business owner, any business owner who wants to refinance has gone out and they've gotten approved and they have the credit and they have all the things in line and it pencils out, they do that without any of our approval, right? The only reason that it's coming to us is because our redevelopment agency money was involved. So in that sense, we can get Colin on the line, but you know, if the language came from him, that's kind of where I see it. So they need a decision.
I don't think we need to bother Colin with it.
Well, and for what it's worth, John, who is deep into redevelopment and successor agencies, has his fingerprints all over this too, which should tell us it's in pretty good shape.
I mean, a bank's not going to approve a loan for an organization that they don't think can meet the payment on, right?
Particularly nowadays, the lender criteria is so rigorous that if they're able to qualify for this refi or this new loan, if you will, and that lender saying, well, behind this is this legacy RDA financing, we don't want to put our first money at risk by something happening with this RDA loan. So go tell the RDA folks that you want to subordinate. They're second in line. Make it clear we get ours first. And that's what this is that original lender, that new lender saying, God bless you, city of Norco, but we're going to protect our money first. And this document accomplishes that. It just makes sure you're still in second position as you've been for a decade and a half.
All right, so with that, then I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve and execute a subordination agreement with the group listed.
Please vote.
You don't remember. What did your vote not sign you back in after?
Motion passes unanimous.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to item number 4.
Correctly. Motion passes with Councilmember Newton voting no.
All right, thank you. So item number 4 are public comments. So I'll call on the city clerk.
No public comment cards for this.
All right. So we will move on to item number 5, which are legislative matters. So any questions or concerns with items 5A from council? 5A, our second reading. All right. Any public comment?
We have no public comment, Mayor.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimous.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 6. Just for informational purposes, we'll have the staff report and presentation. We'll have council can ask questions. We'll have public comment. It'll come back to council for discussion and action. So next on the agenda is a discussion of the recommendations with the planned veterans housing project. So Lori, you're going to handle that one to start.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item 6A, is a discussion, kind of an update and a touch point with the council with regard to our planned veterans housing project on Sarah Avenue. And Alma would be here tonight, but she is at the American Planning Association of California conference right now. So I'm filling in. So I'm going to hand it over to Kathy Head, who is our working with Kaiser Marston and Associates. We've retained, council approved retaining Kaiser Marston to do the RFP, manage development, and the RFP process for the developer who will assist us with the veterans housing project. So Kathy has got a presentation for you today that we have already shown the contents of this to the council subcommittee on this, which is Mayor Pro Tem Bash and Councilmember Alleman. So they recommended we bring this to you for further discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kathy to walk you through kind of the 2 key issues and the recommendations.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I am Kathy Head, President of Kaiser Marston, as Lori told us. I'm just going to give you a brief presentation, and then I'm available to answer any questions that you may have on this matter. So what we're looking at is the disposition of the properties that you acquired at 4095 and 4061 Sierra Avenue. So there are a series of issues that need to be considered before you go out to looking for a developer through an RFP or an RFQ process. So I'm just going to go over the major issues associated that you're going to need to be thinking about. So the first and probably the most important thing that came out of this was the property was acquired with former redevelopment funds, former housing set-aside funds, which are now placed in your low and moderate income housing asset fund, euphemistically known as LMIHAF. Once redevelopment was terminated, a series of requirements were placed on the use of these former housing set-aside funds. And they're not project specific, but they are time specific. And so given the notion that you probably won't be doing a lot of projects over this time frame, it's probably best anytime you do a project to meet these requirements. Otherwise, because they don't go away. If you run out of money, the requirement does not go away. And so the key requirements are at least 30% of the funds need to be spent for extremely low income units. It's not units, it's not 30% of the units, it's 30% of the funds. And that's important because extremely low income units have a bigger gap, affordability gap, than higher income levels do. The ceiling is no more than 20% of the funds can be spent for households earning between 60% and 80% of the area median income. And then the final, the slush between these two, whatever's left over after you've done whatever you're going to do with those first two, is that the remaining funds can be used for households at 0 to 59% of area median income. For the analysis that we ran when we were looking at the numbers on this, we ran them all at 59%, which is what we've commonly been doing since this proportionality was set. Okay, so then the next thing that you have as an obligation to keep in mind is the Surplus Land Act. And so I'm recommending that the city choose one of the exemption categories for the Surplus Land Act. Doesn't mean you don't have to follow the Surplus Land Act. It just means if you meet certain criteria, you can pretty much then chart your own course. If you choose not to be exempt, then you have the state's Housing and Community Development Department in the picture at all times. Every step you make, if you're not an exemption, you have to run it by HCD to make sure you've done it okay. Comparatively, if you pick one of the exemption categories, then once HCD is approved that you meet the standards for that exemption, then they stay out of your hair. So to the extent it's possible to use an exemption category, I always recommend it. Given your requirements from the former housing set-aside funds and the fact that those requirements are more stringent than the Surplus Land Act requirements, your best scenario is to go for the exemption where 100% of the units are affordable and at least 75% of those units have to be affordable to households earning 80% of the area median income or less. Again, if you remember the slide before, you can't even get to 120% of area median income, and you have a limited number of 80% of median or less. So again, as a practical matter, I'm just gonna go back. You're gonna need to meet these standards. At least 30% of the money has to be spent for extremely low income, and no more than 20% of the funds can be spent for 80% of the median households. I did. I've gone way too fast. Okay, there we go. There we go. So also the Surplus Land Act gives you minimum covenant requirements that are actually the same as the low mod income housing asset fund requirements are. And that's either a minimum of 45 years for ownership units or 55 units for rental units. Okay, so that's that issue. So the next issue that we have to consider before soliciting proposals for this site is that the current zoning has a minimum lot size of 21,780 square feet. Based on the size of this site, that would allow for a maximum of 10 units on the site. So there's a fundamental assumption, and we discussed this with the subcommittee, that the zoning will be amended to some higher density, but that density hasn't been established yet, and that's something that the city council is going to need to reach consensus on before going forward. So this is just to give you a sense of what the rents are and what the affordable sales prices are for housing at the various affordability levels. And this is important to understand, so when you get a picture of the constraints associated with trying to do ownership housing on this site. Because I know the fundamental goal was to do ownership housing on this site. Given the low moderate income housing asset fund requirements, where that leaves you is with affordable sales prices that don't come close to even covering the cost of construction of the units. So for example, a 3-bedroom unit, the affordable price for an extremely low income household is $16,800. So given again the limits, the 30%, et cetera, then it becomes very difficult to achieve that. Comparatively, the rents are also low because of it. So the rents are, for a 2-bedroom unit, extremely low income are $525. So again, the requirement to have these extremely low income units really creates an impact on the feasibility of the project and the amount of financial gap that you're going to see on these projects. So I ran 2 ownership housing alternatives. I ran one with a 10-unit meets zoning requirement standard. And in that one, extremely low income units, you needed 3 of them. You needed 5 units at 59% of area median income and 2 low income units, between 60 and 80. So if you remember the prices for the extremely low income units, that's what really creates this gap. And so as you can see, the construction gap, so the difference between what it costs to build the project and the total of all the sales revenue based on 3, 5, and 2 is $3.7 million. In addition, you've spent $2.45 million acquiring the property. So your total financial gap that would have to be filled by the city is approximately $6.2 million. And that equates for a 10-unit project about $618,000 a unit. I then ran it also at 50 units because the more units you have, the more units you can spread the land costs across. But you also have the construction costs, which are a huge impediment. And so in that case, you have to have 13 extremely low income units, 26, 59% of area median income units,
and 11 low-income units. So the land property acquisition cost remains the same. The construction cost gap increases to $18.4 million. So you have essentially $20.8 million in assistance to the 50 units, which equates to $417,000 per unit. So then, looking at that and recognizing that those gaps are likely higher than you can reasonably fill with no longer having a redevelopment, which Bill is very sad about, we looked at apartment development, and we looked at it two different ways. So something to keep in mind with apartment projects is there's a lot of outside public assistance available to deeply affordable rental units. There's state money, there's federal money, and there's low-income housing tax credits. The numbers I've shown you here on this chart only assume the use of tax credits and the tax-exempt bonds that go with 4% tax credits. Those funds would be, like, they're the floor of what you would get. So if you had a good qualified developer and a project that's at least 50 units, and that's an important criteria, then it would likely qualify for even more outside funding than I'm showing on this table. So this table I perceive to be the worst case scenario. And so the bonds and 4% low income housing tax credits generates, again, for a 50 unit project, a $10.6 million construction gap. Then again, the property acquisition cost of $2.45 million. And you get a total gap to be filled by the city of about $13 million or $262,000 per unit. If you go with the 9% tax credits, which are extremely competitive, and so the project would have to get all the points in the competitive process to be competitive to win them, is then the construction cost gap falls to almost $6.7 million. Property acquisition costs remain the same. Total gap is $9.1 million or $182,900 per unit. So that's a lot of numbers. So I just want to close with the summary, and we can leave this up, or you guys, I think you probably have this on your screens anyway, just as a point of reference. The 10 unit project, I did this all as 50 unit projects. So the ownership project at 50 units and the $417,000 per unit assistance. The bond and 4% tax credit project that ends up at $262,000 a unit, and the 9% tax credit that ends up at $182,900. And that's my presentation. And I'm obviously available for questions. Mayor, if I may summarize also, so the subcommittee discussed this information, and the subcommittee's recommendation was that the council consider doing the rental project in lieu of the homeownership because it's just more feasible. As much as we favor the homeownership project, it's very unlikely to actually be possible financially. And then the second thing the subcommittee recommended was preliminarily agreeing to do the zoning at 50 units per acre. They're not interested in doing anything higher than that, but at 50 units an acre, again, that's a project that's feasible based on Kathy's recommendation, and she can elaborate more. But something smaller than that is, again, it's too small to attract a developer. I know one of our neighbors, Chino Hills, right, was the one who has doing a 50 unit affordable, and they've got a large number of developers very interested in that project. So, so those are kind of the two main decision points for discussion that we're asking the council to give us some general direction on today, so we can move forward with that RFP. If I could just say one more thing, it's 50 units or 10 units per acre, as opposed to 50 units per acre. I didn't want to scare the entire audience. You did.
Yes. All right. So does council have questions on the report? Questions, Berwin?
You're talking about these two pieces of property here, correct? 4095 and 4061.
Yes.
And each one of those are half an acre,
No, the total acre is 5.02 acres.
5.02. Okay, because that one slide up where you had a half an acre on there. Okay, well, I see where you'd get the room then to build that many apartments. Thank you.
Other questions on the report or staff at this time? All right. Any questions? Assuming no. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and ask, are there any public comment cards?
Yes, Mayor, we have two. First one is Chris Botcher. Oh, they put 7A. 6A, sorry.
All right, very good. So then we'll bring it back to council for discussion and action. So I guess, are you okay if I ask subcommittee questions? Okay. So on the report, it just says that there's a recommendation from the subcommittee for a maximum of 50 rental units, and then creative design and want an approach that fits like animal keeping, large lots. So can I get some input from our colleagues that are on the subcommittee, what discussion looked like around that? And as far as creative design goes and how we make it fit with the neighborhood and kind of keep our lifestyle.
Yeah, so the good thing about this project is that we own the land, so that gives us a lot of leverage on the design. And so it says in here, you know, a creative design, because in our discussion, we didn't want to, kind of the consensus was limit a developer from coming in with some really cool ideas, but we want to give them parameters for what we find will be acceptable. And so I think even, you know, our first thought, right, was to do home ownership. We just won't be able to get the funding for that. It just is impossible. And I don't think we have the funding to then supplement the cost. But with the rentals and with our original thought was, you know, small duplexes or triplexes to make it, you know, look really nice. We wanted to incorporate, you know, animal keeping, whether that's a garden or chickens or what have you. And so even with the rental, we can still do that. And so we talked about those different ideas, and you know, that's kind of where it came with. We want it to fit in. We want it small. That's also something that can be used to cut back construction costs, right? If we have single veterans, smaller units, you know, would also limit the impact on the area. We want it to fit in that neighborhood. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Kevin.
One of the things that came up is that when you have low-income private ownership housing, the owners can't afford to keep it up, and that's a problem. And, I mean, trust me when I tell you this is a difficult things to do. We can cater to veterans, continue that. But again, I think that in my mind, what it focuses on is studio apartments, single veterans, smaller, maybe couples places, things like that. Something that would have to be something that would have to fit in the neighborhood. I know that's a lot of units, but it would have to fit in that neighborhood. There'd have to be amenities there. I'm being told that they would be able to do it on that size of a property. I do have a question. So I'm always watching the tunnels to tower. You know, I send my $11 every month. Is this the kind of property that maybe somebody would come in like that organization and build homes on larger lots? Is that something they might do for veterans? Is that a possibility?
You mean rental homes?
Or homes? I mean, they're building. I just don't know really how it works. I just send them the $11. They seem to be building full-on homes, but the problem is we couldn't exactly donate the land to them because that would be a donation of public funds to a private entity, or would it be?
You can donate the land to an affordable housing project that has covenants on it. In fact, in all likelihood, whatever entity conveys this property, receives conveyance of this property, what you'll do is you'll loan them the money in the form of, if it's apartments, in the form of a $2.45 million residual receipts loan, but you'll only then be repaid out of cash flow generated by the project over time. So it's effectively a donation of the land. I will tell you, I think the problem, at least with the self-help organizations that I've worked with, in terms of affordable ownership housing, they can't get to extremely low income. It's just too much of a hit to their bottom line, and so they need the money. The amount of this gap is basically going to be the same whether you use a for-profit developer or a non-profit developer, just because they tend to behave the same way ultimately.
In your experience, one of the other things too that we touched on briefly is that if you get a good proprietor, then they will tend to keep the properties up. Of course, the fear is like I think of the one over on River Road that was touted as being this wonderful apartment complex that just looks awful.
Right. I think as you mentioned when we were on both of you mentioned when we were on the virtual meeting, is I think the key to this is finding a good quality developer who shares your vision for the property. And as Lori mentioned, Chino Hills, when we just did an RFP there for a 50-unit project, we got 13 developers bidding on it, and nobody knows it yet, but we've shortlisted 3 of them. All very high quality developers. It's key in the selection process to get what you want, what your goals and objectives are, clearly stated in the RFP, so that developers really like to know the game, the game plan and the game, the rules, so that they can provide you with a better proposal, or not propose if it's not something that they would do well. So I think it is really important to spend time up front identifying your goals and objectives and making them very clear in the RFP.
So anyway, in my mind, what it is like Catherine said, duplexes, quite a few studio apartments if possible, and make it, I guess in my mind, what I'm seeing is when you see the courts, that's kind of what I'm thinking of. When you see, like you go to Los Angeles, even in Corona, there's a couple of them where you have homes, and then all of a sudden you have this cute little courtyard. And that's kind of what I have in mind. And let's face it, the whole reason we're doing this, the state of California is just sitting on top of her head, and we're trying to make it, with the veterans, we're trying to make it palatable to Norco residents. But for me, I guess, I don't know if I would approve anything unless I'm seeing that kind of courtyard kind of, you know what I'm saying?
No,
Just
absolutely.
A zillion of them.
I agree. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, and that's definitely an awesome option. Another option may be there are duplexes and triplexes that are designed and they look like single family homes where you have the entrances at different sides. It could be a combination of those things where you have a unit, then you have a carriage unit in the back, a little studio above a garage. So I think if we're able to communicate to interested developers that this is what we're looking at, you're not looking at 3-story walk-ups, like 2-story max, something again that looks very similar to the neighborhood.
Oh.
Correct. And one of the constraints will always be affordability. So, but the style of architecture does not really create additional costs for construction, right? So I think we can do affordable and still do that interesting sort of design. And I think the neighborhood kind of dictates that too. When the developers see the neighbors, they're going to see that they can't just do some sort of generic 3-story walk up or something that would fit, on Jamboree and Newport Beach. This is not that, right? This is a single family, single story, large lot neighborhood. So it's got a blend, like you say. And the courts, I agree, are charming. I love those. So, and they'll still serve veterans. They'll still serve people that we want to serve. Keeping the animal keeping function is therapeutic. It's beneficial to folks who are coping with PTSD and other conditions that are similar. So I think that could really fit in well for the right developer.
The other thing too is I envision pathways. I envision smaller beam belts interspersed through it. I think that might work nicely. But again, if I don't see that, then I've got trouble. Then we're land banking.
So I guess that leads me to a question when we talk about the RFP, this kind of vision that Kevin and Catherine have worked on in the subcommittee and that they've talked about. That is very direct and specific in the RFP, right? So a developer's not coming in and saying, well, what the heck? Why am I putting in chicken coops in this development or whatever? Like, it's all spelled out, correct?
Right. No, that's
Okay.
exactly it. If when you come to consensus as a council, then we'll put it directly into the RFP so that it's clear. Because no developer wants to waste their time. Writing a proposal takes a long time and it takes a lot of resources. So the clearer you are, the better responses you'll get. Or people, as I say, a number of developers will look at it and say, I don't want to do that. And they won't they won't bid, which is fine because you're not going to pick them. So it's sort of a win-win.
And then at what point in time do other organizations like a veterans organization look at a project or find a project like this and say, you know what, we want to help, we want to contribute? Where does that play into the picture in offsetting some of these costs, or does it not?
No, it absolutely can, because of the fact we're going to designate this as a veterans project. A clever developer will go out and solicit that participation.
So that isn't on
That's
the
not on
shoulders
you.
of the city, that's on the shoulder of the developer.
Right.
Now, if somebody on council knows some of these partners, we would just pass that information to the developer, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So for example, and it would be, again, I think in fairness, if you know of these organizations, it would be fair to put that these organizations are available to contact in the RFP itself. So not just some developers and not others know about it.
Okay. Councilmember Newton, did you have questions or comments?
Start off with an easy one. On your issue summary, item 2, this is on the AMI, 80% of San Bernardino County median income. Does not Riverside County have a median income number
do.
that we could have used?
Yes. No, that's my fault. It's the same, by the way. They have the same median income.
So you can condition this project to only rent to veterans forever.
Yes.
And then 5 years, 10 years down the road, that developer or owner, or whoever they sold it to, now you have a new owner goes, hey, I can't fill it. I can't make it work. You need to open this up to everybody else.
Well, I mean, you'll have a covenant, and I mean, it'll be somewhat like the discussion you had about the consent item, is if they come and they've shown good faith effort, then you'll have to make a decision as to what you do. I find it hard to believe they won't be able to find veterans if the project is properly structured and the unit types are
So
what
you-
are meet the
But
needs.
you can condition it to veterans only.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Would back on the housing element on this, would the duplexes fall into multifamily?
What do you mean from a planning perspective?
No, as far as a financing
No,
perspective.
they'll be fine because it's see, and as Councilmember Bash mentioned, the notion between an ownership project and a rental project is, in the rental project, one entity owns the whole project, and so they own
Right.
a 50-unit project. Doesn't matter how the units are configured; it's a 50-unit project. Whereas on the
Okay, so I'm
ownership-
going back to the
yeah, on the
ownership.
on ownership, they'd all be separately owned. So each each side would be owned by a different entity. And so then the other thing that happens then in an ownership project is that some people have more means and are able to afford doing regular, capital repairs, et cetera, as the home grows older. And then, they're extremely low income households. I mean, just really don't. I mean, they, just by the amount of money that they, the discretionary income an extremely low income household has, they don't have the funds to take on the ownership experience, really. And so what you have is you have the chance that some units will be kept very, very well and other units won't. And because they're all owned separately, you're out chasing individuals. Whereas if the apartment complex is not taken care of in the manner you like, you're going after one owner.
But could you not work that around with, when you have ownership, that you could require that builder developer, let's say, to give a leg up, like an HOW, that you'd have to have built in that cost to be a 10-year home warranty for all major components. That would give that homeowner at least 10 years to try to build up, equity and finances to help with the maintenance of the house.
And I could see it for low income. I cannot see it for extremely low income. When you look at the county, income for very low or extremely low income households.
And then back on like the apartments, I see the direction you're going, that with rentals, do we stand a better chance of recovering our initial investment?
I wouldn't do it for the money. I mean, I really don't think this project, I mean, they're gonna have to show for a tax credit application that over a 55-year period, they're gonna be able to repay whatever your residual receipts notes are. But I will tell you, I would not be budgeting revenue from that for a very long time.
I mean, in our original
Yes.
investment of 2.5.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Kathy. What she's saying is like, don't budget that revenue coming in the beginning, but over time, that residual receipts gap starts to happen over as these projects age. So she's saying is today they rent for X, they rent for $500, right? 10 years from now, they'll rent for $750. 20 years from now, they'll rent for $1,500, right? So the longer you get out, that residual receipt gap starts to get bigger and you start to see those checks come back. So in my experience, you do see that money come back, but you see it at the end. You see it toward the end. You don't see it in the beginning. Right.
And just for a point of reference, so a one-person extremely low-income household's annual income is $19,600 at the maximum. A four-person is 30.
So our original intent on, and I appreciate what Catherine and Kevin, you've done on this. Our original intent, that goes back all the way to Councilmember Hoffman, was that to provide housing for veterans, okay? But also to give them the opportunity to build generational wealth, give them a leg up with home ownership. And never do I recall having discussions with Ted about having apartments. 50 rental units in the middle of a single family established neighborhood that's animal keeping just seems, I don't know what direction you're taking us. So my next question is, how do we walk away from this? How do we dump this property and look for something else like we looked at with different projects for Habitat for Humanity? Something to that effect where we can still do something for veterans, okay, but on a smaller scale. Because honestly, I'm going to tell you, what you're going to have to change the zoning and 50 units, it's going to become a charter issue, and I'm not going to support it. That's too much for that neighborhood. So,
Yeah, the short answer is you can always sell the property.
so what's the exit on
The
that?
money goes back to the Affordable Housing Fund.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a decision of the body.
Just to make it clear, the same proportionality restrictions will apply on any property you pick. Just to be
Right.
clear.
And then,
Maybe we look at single projects or something through a different venue, but I've just honestly, I don't like the direction this is going.
yeah, the other, just something to keep in mind too, if we were to sell the property, that will be subject to the Surplus Lands Act. So we'll go through that process.
Sure.
Assuming that we don't reach terms with an affordable developer, then the property would be encumbered with with a restriction, or the deed restriction that would require affordability of 25%.
It would be, well, it is 25%, but again, I just have to reiterate, you cannot get away from this proportionality test because of the money you spent to acquire it. So if you sell it, I mean, if you get back the 2.45 million,
Right.
if you get back, but then you're right, you're constrained by the Surplus Land Act, and then you'd be going non-exempt. And so you would have a 25% low income requirement.
So and typically what that results in is a reduction in land value. So if we were to sell, it is possible. I don't know that we would, I don't want to say it's absolute, but it's possible and perhaps likely that we will not sell for what we purchased the property for, because it's going to come with that encumbrance. And typically that comes out of land value. At least that's my experience.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can understand that. I'd rather take a small loss up front than a bigger impact and loss forever. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
And I'll agree with what Greg says on all that, and I'm not against helping the veterans. I'm all for helping them, but everybody's talked, and there's one thing they didn't mention. The location of this. You got two of the high traffic areas at each end of that block, Sixth and Sierra with all those businesses over there, and then Detroit and Sierra with all the cut-through traffic from Riverside. That's a mess twice a day over there. And I'm not talking for just a few minutes. I was sitting over there a couple of years ago when the deputies were working that street from Valley View to Hamner. And they didn't have to flag anybody down. They just walked from car to car giving tickets because it was just jammed up that far on there at 7 o'clock in the morning. It was still that way at 8 o'clock in the morning. And it's that way late in the afternoon. So I can't go with that. I think we need to look somewhere else. Thank you.
How many units were in that original when it had like Kevin's Way and
I was
Catherine's
just
Way and
so
all
it
of
was
that?
going to be around the same. It would it would have been the same again to make it pencil. When we looked at doing single family homes, the nonprofit that we talked to was Homes for Family. That's the gala that you went with, Ted, right? Yeah, there were 55 units because again, you have to, whenever you're doing affordable, right, there's a certain margin you have to make because you have to subsidize it. There was a lot of work that would have been needed for the design on that project. They were basically cookie cutter 2-story duplexes that had been kind of done in other places, and they were larger in size compared to kind of the ones we're talking about, and keeping the scale on the land smaller. So it was comparable to the homes, if not larger units in terms of square footage.
So yeah, that design, frankly, I mean, I think we could do better. It was an okay design. I think it was a good start. But in any scenario, whether it's rental or affordable, you were looking at the 10 units an acre.
I'm going to make a suggestion. Because I'm not, as much as I want to build veterans housing, I'm not real hot on the apartment idea either. And I'm wondering if there's some, maybe we need to just try to think this through somehow and really think this through in some way that we can either get rid of the property or we utilize it in such a way that we kind of think outside the box. And I'm not sure how that works. You're the expert. But I mean, one of the things that somebody came to me about that early on when we first started this is, well, actually it was those two guys in the back. One of the things that they talked about was creating a community, an agricultural complex in which people live and grow food where they live. I have no idea what that's about, but I'd like to explore the option. Maybe you have less units, something. You still go with the veterans. I'm just not certain.
I will say, I mean, I know I've harped on it, and so this will be the last time I say it. The extremely low income component that you have to have,
Right.
the impact. I mean, I can promise you Homes for Family could not do extremely low income.
Right.
I've worked on a number of their projects,
Right.
and the lowest they get is low. And so it's just a matter of you essentially, I mean, realistically, if you want to sell a house to an extremely low income household, you have to give it to them. That is effectively what you have to do.
It's kind of what the state wants us to do, isn't it?
No. No, the state would like you to build 50 units the acre on that site and have it all be apartments. I mean, that's what they'd like you to do. So then it could be 250 units. So that's, I mean, the state is all about density. And the redevelopment requirements have been in place since redevelopment ended. And so it's just a pesky requirement that there are penalties. I mean, there are actual penalties for not achieving those goals with the money. And that is you have to find other money to use if you don't meet those goals. So you're not getting out of that extremely low income component.
When you talk about the penalties, what are it, fines or what?
No,
what
you
are
just
the
have to,
penalties?
you have to achieve the proportion. So 30%, if you've spent, say for example, you spent, just to use an extreme example, you spent 100% of your money on, and say, well, I don't want to do the math in my head. Say you had $10 million. And so 30% of it, $3 million has to be spent on extremely low income. and say you spent $7 million on housing units affordable to folks who earn between 60 and 80%, but you could only spend 2 million. But in the $10 million scenario, you could only spend 20% of your money. So that other money you spent would have that $5 million extra you spent would have to be replaced by other money.
So, we've looked at a lot of options and we've been talking about this project for a year, I think. Has it been a year? More than you've been here a year, Lori, and it was before Lori's time. So more than a year. Affordable housing is hard to do. It's not easy to do. We wanted to do single family homes. Even then it would have been essentially the same project that we're talking about now, but home ownership. The financing just isn't there for home ownership. There's a ton of money in having a single owner who's renting units. It's also can be easier for folks to get into renting versus owning. We had some discussions about this. These are hard decisions. Ultimately we want to support our veterans. Our senior apartments have the last I heard, a 3-year wait list to get into them. We've got a lot of folks who are having to sell their homes and move other places because they can't upkeep with their big properties. And we've gone through this process with the RFP, and I hear the hesitations, but I just feel if we want to support our veterans, we want to provide housing options. There's not any affordable housing in our city. There's just not, and so when we're talking about wanting to support that community, that's what this project would do. And we can, because we own the land, we can do as much mitigation as we can. Obviously, if the consensus of the council is that no, it's not something we want to do, then it's not something that we want to do. The will of the council, right, is what stands. It takes 3 votes to get anything done. But I know we've spent a lot of time. If that money goes back into the housing fund, we're gonna have it's gonna be the same thing, right? Same problem, different day. I mean, we could change the location of the lot, but we're still gonna come back to needing the 10 units per acre to be able to get someone to develop it. Because what it comes down to is, sure, we could do less units, but then we're on the hook, or we would have to subsidize the housing in order for it to get built. So all the financial gap, like she said, this is the floor. This is only looking at the tax credits that an affordable housing developer could get. There's a ton more money that they could get. When we went into this project, we just wanted to purchase the land. That would be our investment, right? We would buy the land and then the developer would take care of it all. So in order for that to happen, we have to have a certain number of units to make it pencil out. Now we can put a lot of stipulations on the design and things, but if we wanted to do less, then we would have to come up with the financing to make it happen. And I just don't see that that's going to happen either. So if we want to do any kind of affordable housing for veterans, which are a protected class, so we can legally just set it up so it is only for veterans, nobody else. No matter where we try to do this, we're going to come up to kind of the same issues. So, putting the RFP out there still doesn't mean we have to pick anybody, but we can see what we get back and the designs. I mean, certainly, I don't know that that's a recommended route, right? To go down that and have developers, give us their best project and then we just decide not to do it. But I just think there's been a lot of time and thought. We've been really trying to work hard on this. I understand the concerns. I think we've tried to mitigate those concerns as much as possible. And in the end, it is the will of the council on whether to move forward.
I guess for me, when we talk about mitigating the concerns, it's not about the RFP or the process. It's going to be the living conditions in that neighborhood. And until we see a project on paper, we're not going to know that those are mitigated or taken care of. And so I guess that's where I'm kind of stuck at, because again, this is all kind of high level stuff. And at the end of the day, it's going to be what kind of conditions are the people living in, and how do the neighbors feel, and how does it fit? And so that is what I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around, is how far down the process can we get to where we really have an idea of what the impacts are to that neighborhood and the spacing and what kind of quote unquote ag stuff can we put in there, or how can we kind of Norcoize it. So I understand what Catherine's saying, but then I also feel like, well, if we do the RFP, then that's at least going to get us more information to make an informed decision. I cannot, sitting here today, make an informed decision on whether or not 50 ownership or 50 rentals or whatever is going to fit or make sense, because I just don't have the information to make that decision. So how far down the line can we get? And I know every time we take a step forward, that's more money that we're spending. How far down the road can we get on this so that the council has the information they need to make a decision?
So the RFP process will result in you receiving, complete packages from interested developers, right? That's going to include, I think, the major components would be the qualifications of the given developer, their experience, their financials, all of that. The actual physical design, some sort of a site plan, some concept architectural renderings of how they envision putting in the required units in the space, right? And then the math. What is the deal? Like, what is the cost to construct, their stack, if you will, of their financing? So that's what you'll get from interested developers when you get out to RFP. At the end of the day, of course, developers want to know that we're serious. It's a little chicken and egg, right? We have to be serious in order to attract the good folks to provide us with their packages. But at the end of the day, you're not obligated to take any of those packages. It's always your project, and you can determine where you go from there.
I feel like we purchased this property because we were a little bit under the gun because we had too much money in our housing account. And so we needed to figure out a way that we can move forward and use the funds correctly. And so we did that by purchasing the property. And then again, the idea of veterans housing was something when we looked at having to put in something that was a little bit higher density than clearly what Norco is built for, that veterans would be something that would be agreeable to the residents as a whole. And I certainly understand where Councilman Newton is coming from. And I'm just wondering if this property was in a different place, does that matter? Like, does it fit better somewhere in Norco, knowing at some point in time, whether that's 15 years down the road or 20 years down the road, we have to build something. Does it make it better for you if it's on River Road and 2nd Street, or like how does that fit? If you are mandated, you have to do this, where does it go? Or how does it fit?
I think where we were originally, when we first started talking about this, I was fine with the site, and that just in general conversations that we had, that these would be single family homes. And I never had any heartburn about that. I guess I have to answer your question by asking you a question. When you come up with your density of 10 units per acre,
Yes.
you're just basing that on gross square footage.
Correct.
Okay. So that the picture I'm trying to develop in my head and see this project, that the density of 50 rental units, going to park all those cars on the street? Where are you going to have all this green space? How are you going to accomplish all this open space for animal keeping or agriculture, right? And then little walkways and courtyards and all of that. A department developer, they're just units, and they're just going to try to squash what they can in there. So that's why I'm trying to envision it. 50 is a big number. Okay, and that's a big impact. But then those numbers don't work for a developer. So, but I see where you're getting at, Robin, is that if you want to find out what the cost additional is to go to RFP, and if you think we need that information to make educated decision whether to modify or walk or move forward. But 50 just seems, that's 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag.
Mayor, if I may add, if the council were interested in 50 single families units, we could, that is an option. But the issue would be that those would be for rent units. So it's the same, in other words, the whether it's for sale or for rent does not dictate the architecture, doesn't dictate the form. So if you go back to that original Homes for Families project, if the council were interested in doing those small unit, single family, that is an apartment project. That can be an apartment, a rental project. In fact, there's a major apartment developer that we all know who does single family rentals. As a matter of fact, they build and own them in some of their projects. So I would just suggest that well, I'm just saying, but that is an option. So the form, if the concern is about the form, then we could do single family form in the RFP. Say, hey, we're interested in rentals that are a single family form. I think though architecturally it would look nicer and look more like the neighborhood if they were actually duplexes or tries. They can actually look better. I know it's hard to imagine, but I really think it could be better. But again, if the council were interested in the single family form as a rental project, that is something you could request, or at least have developers tell developers you're interested in that in the RFP, if you choose to go to RFP.
And if I could just add one thing. So when, because we talked about these, right? Because our idea originally was single family home ownership, but the things that came up that kind of made it unfeasible for us, right, were the cost. We'd have to fork over more money. That wasn't what we were planning, right? Just the land and then the upkeep, right? So if there's one building manager, they have to keep everything up to the same standards versus what we talked about, different homeowners, right? And then having to go after different homeowners to keep up their land versus just one person. And then the thought with putting them together like a duplex or triplex is kind of keeping that lot coverage smaller, right? So combining it. But we want it to feel like, ideally, right, what we put in our RP was that it would feel like a small little neighborhood that would fit in. The thing with having smaller units too is then there's less cars needed, right, for parking, to kind of work with that issue. If it's a lot of studios and a lot of just one bedrooms, then you're not having larger units, right, that might then have more people and more cars and more impact. So just to kind of give you kind of where we talked through this and why we came to the where we are today.
One of the things I did was try to do some homework, was that the various veteran housing projects around are rentals, but the rents start at 1 month. And then they can go longer term. And I found that very consistent in all these different rental or veteran developments that were San Bernardino County, Fontana, this general area. And it's right there, you know,
Yeah,
rents from monthly to longer terms.
There,
And then
there
all I
was
could
money
think
out
of was the extended stay. Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, there were federal programs out there to assist transitional housing for veterans.
Right.
And so that's how those projects came up.
Yeah. Which I wouldn't be interested in doing at all.
That's okay. The fundings are gone in here.
Other discussion so that staff has some direction.
Well, I mean, the subcommittee, we brought a recommendation. I think it kind of depends on you three. I mean, for me, essentially, this is very similar to, if not very much the same project that Ted was involved in, minus how the money and where is it's coming, right? If it's coming for single family home or if it's coming through rental. And so when we really dug into everything, we just didn't see a way to make it work without the city having to come up with millions and millions and millions of more dollars. And we did all of our due diligence with our first organization that we worked with. And I think that this was the right choice to go out and try to see any other affordable. And when we talk about kind of apartments, some of I don't know how to put this, but some of them are nonprofit organizations. They're true to their mission, which is providing affordable housing. And so there are some good developers out there who do really good projects. They're not just trying to maximize, right, as many buildings and density bonuses and this and that. They're trying to build things to build community and to fit in with their organization, with the cities and where they are. And that's certainly what we would want to see if we decided to pick somebody. So it certainly wasn't what we wanted from the get-go, but we've tried to work it out as best we could to, in the end, we wanted to provide housing for our vets, right? That's a huge part of our community, and we want to give them a place, right, to be in our community that's affordable, that they can be with dignity. And as Kevin mentioned, right, I mean, for some of our arena numbers, and to make good on our commitment that we're going to do what we can in a way that fits in. And if the consensus is that it doesn't fit in there after all this, and then that's the consensus. So really looking to all you three to my right. So I appreciate all the discussion and the points.
Are my colleagues open to spending the money to go through the RFP process? And I guess my question for legal wise is, if the subcommittee develops this RFP, just kind of how the waste one, does that come to full council, and can we workshop or talk about it and tweak the RFP a little bit as a group before that goes out?
You can have whatever process you'd like, Mayor. If the council would like to have the RFP come back here, we absolutely could workshop that. It's up to you.
Yeah, I really think that was in the back of my mind. Is what we really need to do is we need to talk about this.
Right.
Get it now out of the subcommittee, go to the full council. Maybe the public will weigh in. I mean, I think that's an excellent.
Well, do you think, because we just did the RFP for trash.
Right.
Still have Kevin and Catherine go through kind of the nuts and bolts of the RFP and then bring it back?
2 questions. Then just what's the cost, additional cost? If it's reasonable for the RFP, I'm fine. And then I'm going to challenge Catherine on, because I'm such a cynic. I'd like to see your list of reputable developer builders.
That's a very good, no, I won't say.
I have seen some beautiful projects. I will bring you. How many do you want?
Spoken like a true contractor. The council's already approved an agreement with Kaiser Marston for their assistance with the RFP. So we have an agreement with Kathy's firm for her services. So I don't think that there's a whole lot of additional money. We're just paying her on a hourly basis for her work. So I'm sure she's happy to come, and she's very good with her time. So yeah.
All right. So Kevin and Catherine, are you guys good to do some more subcommittee work and get a draft RFP that we can all kind of then nitpick when you bring it back? Okay. So is that good for direction for staff then?
Yes. And I'm hearing, Mayor, that you suggested a workshop. So we'll plan a workshop for that.
Yeah. Well, after the subcommittee
After the
does
subcommittee's work,
work,
we'll bring it back to a workshop where you can all really dig in, and we invite members of the community to participate and give us their thoughts as well. Great.
that would be good.
Okay. Thank you.
Then we don't need a motion or anything, right? Because that was a provide direction, correct? Okay, so that leaves us one item on the agenda, and it is 9 o'clock. So there's been a request for a break. So let's come back at 9:05. And I'm sorry for those of you that are here for item 7. We've been here since 6, so.
Delete list or
back after it. So we are going to go to item number 7, our public hearing. And then again, just as a reminder, we have our staff presentation. We'll have council can ask questions. We'll open the public hearing. We'll take public comment. We will close the public hearing. And then it'll come back to council for discussion and action. So this one, we are going to get the information from our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. So this is a public hearing related to the approval of various actions related to a loan to 5 key schools and programs to finance the purchase of a 2.38 acre property on 4208 California Avenue for the establishment of a permanent site for the Eat Cultural Center and Farm. So I'm going to give you an overview of the proposal, and then I'm going to hand it off to Vanessa, who is our special counsel on this item, who prepared the various documents to walk you through the documents. So essentially what this proposal is with regard to, we're all very familiar with the Eat Center on Hamner Avenue, and then the Eat Farm, which is located currently at our city-owned properties on Sierra Avenue on an interim basis until that Veterans Affordable Project we just discussed could be under construction. The Eat Center and Farm has been very interested in establishing a permanent site here in Norco for them to be able to continue their mission of promoting this agricultural training and farm-based programming that's used not just in Norco but throughout the area and really is in support of the Norco lifestyle. So this item is with regard to a loan that the city would provide to 5 Keys for, I'm gonna find my spot here, for acquisition of a property at 4208 California. This is that site, as I said, is 2.3 acres, has a small home of about 728 square feet. It's very flat. So it really is ideal for a permanent site for the Eat Cultural Center and Farm, especially being on kind of a larger city arterial, if you will, on California Avenue. So looking at this, it's been proposed that the city would loan 5 Keys the funds for this property acquisition, and they would begin eventually to transition their farming operations from the Sierra Avenue site over to the California Avenue site over the coming term of time. And that ultimately one day this could become a permanent place for the cultural center site. You know, the site that they're occupying right now is the former city library. The council's had a long-term goal to develop that pie-shaped parcel at Hamner and the Freeway 6 on the south as a showcase development of some sort of like eating, entertainment, dining, kind of entertainment sort of use that would be in support of Silver Lakes and kind of those uses we want to see on Hamner. So that eventually I would hope that library gets adaptively reused and gets repurposed as some amazing wine bar or brewery or distillery or some other great use. So this site on California could potentially be another location for that kind of classroom and office space at that wonderful site they have on Hamner. So with that, the proposal you have today is a resolution that would approve a loan agreement and various related documents related to our financing of the purchase for 5 Keys. So really a partnership between the city and 5 Keys in support of the agricultural and small part agricultural and animal keeping lifestyle that we're so committed to here in Norco. We'd really be continuing and building upon that partnership the city has had with 5 Keys. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa to kind of walk you through the agreements and documents.
Good evening.
Sorry about that. This is working now. So I will just briefly walk you through the loan terms, the terms of another document that is before you tonight, and then, the proposed action and the documents that are proposed for approval. So the loan amount would be the actual purchase price for the property being paid by 5 Keys plus the closing costs, the actual closing costs. So up to $1 million, we'll know the actual loan amount a little bit closer to the closing for the property. We're proposing 0% interest and that the loan would be due in 5 years from the closing. 5 Keys would have the right to prepay the loan at any time with a no prepayment penalty. And the loan, importantly, the loan would be non-recourse to 5 Keys. And what that means is that we're not expecting a default, but if Five Keys was to not pay the loan off in 5 years, the city's remedy would not be to sue Five Keys, but your remedy would be limited to essentially a foreclosure of the property. The benefit to the city, it is structured to be that there would be some free programming for city residents, 5 hours per month of, workshops, other agricultural, educational programming at the site. And secondly, that the city would be receiving an option to purchase the property. So that would be for 15 years following the payment of the loan. After Five Keys repays the loan to the city, then for the next 15 years, the city would have the right to purchase the property if Five Keys wants to sell it. So the way that would work is Five Keys decides, we've been here, it's not really working out for us exactly, we'd like to sell this property to somebody. They would get an appraisal and bring that appraisal to the city and offer the property for sale to the city for the appraised price, reduced by an amount, $338,000, which is essentially estimated the amount of interest that the city is agreeing to forego by charging a 0 interest rate on this loan. And then that amount of the reduction from the appraised value would reduce over time over the course of the 15 years. And so little bit tricky to think about, but essentially at the end of the 15 years, the city's option purchase price would be the full appraised value. But early on, the option purchase price would be the appraised value minus $338,000, which is that interest cost that Five Keys won't be paying. Five Keys has asked for a put right. And what that means is during the term of the loan, before they've paid it off, if they are not either going to be able to or wanting to get a new loan or a grant to pay off the city's loan, they would like the right, and we think it's a good idea for the city as well, to essentially require the city to take the property in exchange for forgiveness of the loan. And that's called a put, right? It's kind of a weird concept, but it benefits Five Keys because it enables them to not be in default. They won't have to pay the loan. They won't be in default for not paying the loan if they offer the property back to the city, and the city will essentially purchase the property from them in exchange for forgiving the loan. Benefits the city because you have this kind of potential default scenario where your only remedy would be to foreclose on the property. But if Five Keys has exercised its put right, the city does not have to foreclose on the property. It can just accept title to the property and there's no default and the transaction ends. I thought maybe there was another point I wanted to make there. In both the case of the city's option and in the case of the put right, there's a couple of protections for the city. The city's obligation in the put scenario to take title to the property is subject to the requirement that the title to the property and the physical condition of the site are both in the same condition as they are now. So there can't be a new mortgage against the property. They can't have, allowed the property to be contaminated or anything like that. So the city is protected in that manner. The documents in front of you tonight are a loan agreement, which sets forth the terms of the loan from the city to Five Keys, a promissory note, which represents Five Keys' promise to repay the loan, a deed of trust, which is the mortgage, that's the security for the loan, and the put option agreement. So there's one agreement that both describes 5 keys put right and the city's option to purchase the property after the loan repayment. And then the resolution before you tonight would approve all of those documents, authorize the closing of the transaction, and authorize the city manager to take all of the actions necessary to get the loan closed. AB 562 requires that there be a public hearing on this item because of the 0% interest.
Thanks, Vanessa. So that concludes our report, Mayor. We're happy to answer questions about the documents or about the concepts here. And like I said, it is a public hearing because of the requirements of that particular state law.
Thank you for the report. Questions of staff over here? Questions of staff over here?
Just a few. So Lori, my first question's for you. You had authorization to go to $950,000. How do we get to $1 million now?
So $950,000 is the price that the council is willing to pay for the property. But we always had the discussion that was the price. In addition, we would be willing to roll closing costs into the value of the loan. So that's the difference. The price of the purchase is $950,000.
Okay, so an email we got today, sorry, by the
No, that's
seller.
being paid by the what the buyer is paying that purchase. But the buyer, which is 5 keys, received a credit back from the seller of $20,000. So that'll all be netted out at escrow. So those invoices are going into escrow.
My question for the attorney out of the gate, how much are you charging us to put together this contract in your time?
So I am charging an hourly rate of $600 an hour.
So would it be fair to assume that at the end of the day, your bill for this is going to be between $10,000 and $15,000?
Maybe closer to 10, I think.
Okay. And so where are we allocating the $10,000 fee to the attorney?
We'll have to put that on our budget, but Colin had recommended we retain special counsel since it's
Oh,
outside
that I
his
understand.
expertise.
I don't have any
Yeah,
problem
so
with
we
that. That's your
typically-
field of expertise, but where does $10,000 come from?
Typically, we charge that to the city attorney's division budget. And if we need to allocate additional money for that toward the end of the year, we'll come to the council and ask for that. But at this time, we haven't asked for that.
So we don't know how we're going to pay the attorney. We're going to pull it out of somewhere, right?
No, we're going to pay it out of the city attorney's division budget.
So then, we have a couple of programs that one will be put on by community services. And then we have the financial reports that'll have to be done by finance for the first 5 years, correct? Do we have an idea of administration costs for community services and finance?
No, we don't have any estimate on that. But you're right, there will be some staff time involved in administration.
So this is kind of where I have a problem with. There's some issues. So try to get back to my highlighting, and if I'm a little off, bear with me on this. For the first 5 years, the community, in conjunction with the new property owner, community services will hold up to 5 public events. I'm trying
Yeah,
to find
I
it,
think
whether
it's
it's
on
quarterly
page-
or,
I think it's page 17, it comes to mind, of the loan agreement. I may not have that.
There you go. Yeah,
Is that right?
16.
Page 60. Okay, I was close.
5
So-
hours per month of workshops.
Yes, a minimum of 5 hours per month of workshops
Right.
to program through community services.
And that will be up to 5 years or whenever that loan is paid off. So if this loan is paid off in 1 year, 2 year, up to 5, after that, there is no obligation for 5 keys to hold any workshops in conjunction with the city of Norco and also free to Norco residents.
Yes, that's correct. Now, that wouldn't preclude them from working with us on that, right?
No,
But
it
it's not
wouldn't.
a, but
if
it's not
they
a
don't
term
want
of the-
to, they don't have to.
Fair enough. It's not a term of the loan agreement, correct?
And at the same time, whenever it's paid off, then there's no more financial records required.
Correct.
So then, let me try to walk through this. So on the put, okay, which I'm just going to basically call it first right of refusal, that when we had a little more time to go over these revisions. So kind of walk me through this, that let's say we get through the 5 years, right? The $1 million is paid off. Right? Get into year 6 and 5 keys goes, we're going to bail. We're done with it. We get an appraisal, correct? And let's say 6 years from now with appreciation. So they're free and clear on the first $1 million, right? At 5 years, they're done with us, correct?
In the sense that they paid back the $1 million in this scenario?
Right.
Yes.
Just the $1 million.
Correct.
Okay. So we get that $1 million back, right? In year 6, let's say that property appreciates for $1.5 million. Right? Then that $338,000, are they paying less the appraisal? Is that 1/15 or 14/15?
So the way it would work is, and you bring up a good point, and I will look back at the language and make sure it is as clear as I can make it. But the way it works is it would be 1.5 million appraised value.
Right.
Minus, and if it's during the first year, it'd be minus $338,000. And then if it was in year 2, it would
Of
be
the 15.
of the 15.
Okay, let's
right.
call it year 2 of the
Yeah.
15. All right.
Year 2 after payment.
Right.
Right. Then the $338,000 would be reduced by 1/15.
See, I think it would be 2/15 if it's the second year after payment, the way that read. It was like 1/15 every year after 5 years. Okay. So, then you figure that one out. But now we're back to, they paid us $1 million. Let's say it appraised at $1.2 million or $1.5 million, less 300, and let's say $30,000. All right. We get to buy that property again for a second time for $1.2 million and pay 5 keys. Is that correct?
No, because you didn't buy it the first time. They bought it. And you lent them
Right,
money.
and we're getting $1 million back.
You got it back. So you paid nothing.
Right.
They bought the property. So you're not buying it back a second time. You
No,
buy it for
I
the first
I understand that. But now figured there's appreciation with that.
because they're the owner. So they're
They're
entitled
right,
to that
so
appreciation.
they own it,
Correct.
and now we will buy it and hand them $1 million plus $1.2 million, right?
Correct. Well, you have the option to buy it. You're not required to
No,
buy
no,
it.
no, no, no. Let's say we want to exercise that.
Yeah.
They have the dirt,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're going to give them $1.2 million,
Right. So they're
or
going to
whatever
take a
that number
haircut.
is.
They're going to take a haircut on their value in recognition of that the whole reason they got to make that appreciation is back in the day, city council gave them a 0% interest loan. So they're not getting the full value of their appraisal. They're getting it at a discount. We're getting it at a discount in that scenario in recognition of that
Right.
cost.
But it depends. So this is just a bet on the come. That's all it is, what that appreciation will be in so many years.
Well, I look at this as we're just trying to recognize an estimated value of that interest that you forewent in this loan and providing an opportunity to get that back should they choose to sell. They may not choose to sell during the 15 period. We hope we have a long, successful relationship. But I think
But
the
then-
concept was that we would provide some level of protection for the city so that if they did choose to cease the relationship, that some of that value on that gain of real estate would come back to the taxpayer for recognizing that initial investment. That was kind of the concept.
I mean, I agree with you on that, Lori. I mean, certainly support the opportunity to promote animal keeping and agriculture, our lifestyle. I get that part of it. I don't know if this is a great deal or not. That's my concern. With it. There seems to be some open-ended stuff here, but that's enough for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Other questions of staff at this time? No? So then we're going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing and clerk will call for public.
We are on 7A, and the first speaker is Chris Fodger.
Can you guys hear me okay? Hi. Just gonna pause for a minute. There's been a lot going on tonight in here. And I feel like I've been driving to this town for 5 years now. Not from here, but I feel like I've been reborn here. This place in 5 years has kind of reshaped who I am. And I don't say that lightly. I think I got a little emotion in my heart about it because this is a real special place. And I think Patrick's from here, but I think Five Keys kind of took a chance on us and said, look, you guys are kind of out in the wilderness. We don't have dollars for you. But if you can go make something happen, and if you can make a cultural impact, then we're behind it. If you can't make it work, we love you, but you got to come home. So I've been driving 150 miles round trip for 5 years to come out here. Can't afford to live here. My kids are in school where I live, so I kind of got a commitment there. But there hasn't been a day in 5 years that I haven't enjoyed coming out. And I can't say that about the rest of my job for the past 9.5 years. There's been plenty of times where I didn't want to wake up and go to work. But this place has changed that in a lot of ways. And so I'm up here to express my gratitude for you for taking a chance on us 5 years ago, for investing in us. And I can tell you, Greg, as long as we're in this town, we're not walking away from this town. And our commitment to providing quality programming for free for the residents, present and future. And that's our commitment to you. That's my personal commitment to you. And I'm not up here because I'm trying to rent your heart. I'm up here opening mine to you. And I know that sometimes it's hard to wrap our minds around how the dollars and the value shake out. But I can tell you that if you wrap your arms and your heart around this program, the value will become evident. So I thank you for taking a chance on us, for believing in who we are, and allowing me to change through this process and to really become a piece of
And our next speaker is Patrick Mitchell.
I also want to thank you guys for taking the opportunity to kind of share our vision and help us move forward with it. I speak to people up and down the state of California about agriculture, about the preservation of agricultural land, and they always say, "You make me want to move to Norco." And that means something. I talk to people in Petaluma who are ready to give up their beautiful little ranches and move to Norco because they feel like there's a movement happening here. And that's pretty exciting. And it's something that's important for us to be a part of. And to some of your questions, Greg, we provide free programming 100%. We've never charged for a single program, and we never will. And that's 5 keys wide. So we will continue to do that long beyond the 5 years. The other piece of some of your concern is we will pay this loan back with grants, and many of those grants will require us to be involved on this property for well beyond 15 years. So we're looking at a long-term and permanent relationship with the city of Norco. And so with that being said, we appreciate it. And, we look forward to getting to work with you guys for a very, very long time. So thank you.
I have no further speaker cards, Mayor.
All right, with that, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. And we are going to bring it back to council for discussion and action. Start over here. Yeah, well, I'm going to start over here because we've had a lot of discussion. I'm going to change it up.
Okay. Just want to make a couple comments. I'm going to vote yes on this. I see this program. We had our small business loans for, to promote them. We had COVID assistance. We've done a number of loan programs to support initiatives in the city that we want to see. And this falls right in those lines within my eyes. We want to support, small plots, small town farming, farm to table, local ag, and city programming. This is huge because while the EAT has awesome programming, it's a big commitment. And so this will open up some programming that people can take from Norco and even outside of Norco. They're not ready yet to commit to the year-long program that EAT is putting on. And they can start to dabble in the things that we want them to. Last month I submitted public comment to Corona. They just redid their chicken ordinance. We've got folks keeping chickens in Corona and Eastville, and they don't offer classes on some of this stuff, composting or beekeeping. You can keep bees in Eastvale. And so it's just a way to keep building that community because the things that we hold dear in Norco and the things that we value, I think we want to share those with our neighbors. It's what makes us special. But, it's also what we can share across cities. And so I'm really excited about that programming, and I'm really excited to give EAT a permanent place because that's been something that we've been trying to figure out, right? We don't anticipate having our original library and city hall there forever. We want that to grow and to be an economic driver. And the land that's getting farmed, our original vision, as we talked about tonight, was to have some housing on that. So this gives and provides a permanent place. And it's a loan that will be paid back. And granted, it's a loan with favorable terms, but it's just like the other loan programs that we've done for the city. So I just want to thank the staff for their hard work on this.
Go ahead, Kevin. We'll come back to that.
It's funny, chickens in Corona. I remember Beth Groves, remember she had a chicken. She had one chicken.
That poor chicken.
She had a chicken in Corona. You know, I talked to Robin about this sometimes. You know, there's two things I depend on in Norco now. One is Norco luck. Norco luck. I mean, the fact that this town exists is impossible. It really is. I mean, I've watched, and a lot of us have watched, Eastvale. I mean, I remember when I worked out there, or Dairy, Urupa Valley, Temesco Valley. We really are a patch of green surrounded by an ever-growing sea of concrete, but what it also means is that there's also a Norco way we figure things out. We really do. And I think that even when people don't know it, they say, oh, what do you want to go, what do you want to have a farm for? It's to protect where they live. This is everything we're doing is to protect where people live. And so I think that purchasing this property, yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's in a perfect location. It's going to be seen. I have great faith in the Five Keys program. And I think that this is going to be a game changer. I think that if Norco is going to survive, there's some priorities that have to change. We are an equestrian community, and hopefully we will be in the future, but we've got to figure out things to do with the large lots. People have to use the large lots, otherwise we're going to lose them. And one of the things we can do is if we can get people to buy into, not everybody, but buy into utilizing their properties to grow things. One, hopefully what that does is somebody in the state legislature says, well, you know, Norco's a pretty cool place. They're growing food. Maybe we'll just leave them alone. Who knows? That's the goal, is to be left alone. Let us be the community we want to be. And what's funny is when I got on council, that was the whole philosophy of the governor. Let's have buffers between all the cities so they can maintain their uniqueness. Well, now we have a governor that says, let's just pave it all over. And so we're trying to avoid that. So I think that this is actually a very important program, and I'm going to also support it. Greg, you bring up some great points, as always. But in this case, I think that we got a bargain on this property, given what properties are selling for. And so I'm really excited about this program, and I really want to see it take off. And I actually am going to try to make a commitment to be part of the Five Keys program so I can see it firsthand. It's just, when you're sitting in the seat, you don't have a whole lot of time. But I'm going to really try to get out there and grow a carrot or something. Maybe there's chicken. No, I had guinea hens. So that's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hannah.
Can I get Patrick up here, please? I gotta grill him.
Patrick, you are
Not a
destined
chicken.
for some questions here.
Yes, sir.
The fowl.
Okay, I don't know anything about how you guys operate, except I see Mr. Sutherland's picture on Facebook every once in a while out there chopping weeds
Uh-huh.
in your garden. But how do you guys work the soil?
So-
I know it's harder than concrete over where you just bought. How do you work that?
So we operate organic and regeneratively. So we keep as much cover on the soil as we can. We increase organic matter. We actually took soil samples of that property, and it's not as bad as it looks. There's some real hope for it. But we will do minimal tillage and minimal work. So we'll obviously have to do some initial amendment and get it into shape. But there's lots and lots of compost makers around town. So we'll have plenty of manure to improve that.
But you have a tractor or something there.
Oh yeah, we have a tractor.
I grew up on an irrigated farm, and we never had less than a 4-acre garden.
Yeah.
They were always up by the irrigation well where it was easy to water.
Mm-hmm.
And that was mine and my brother's job, was to take care of that garden. Mother would go out there and gather all the stuff, everything, but we had to water it and chop the weeds out of it and cut the onion tops off and stuff like that. But a lot of work on them. Then when I was in junior high and high school, I had 3 30-acre potato patches I had to take care of by myself. My dad was farming those at different locations, but he gave me the potato patches, and that was a hell of a lot of work because it keep water going every day on all of them. But another thing, you have people that come like and help till the ground, take care of the weeds, and gather the crops out of there. Or what?
We currently have 60 plus people enrolled in the program, and they all have a responsibility of a piece of the property.
Okay, and then you take all this over to farmer's market.
We sell at the farmer's market. We also sell to a couple of local restaurants. We sell to different caterers, things like that. And so that money comes back into the program and helps support it so that we can maintain the free program.
And you irrigate it with a garden hose, or how do you?
So we use conservation-based drip irrigation systems, drip tape, but it's all based on a garden hose setup. So very minimal water use.
So that's 2 acres over here. You're gonna water all that with the garden hose?
Pretty much. That's, yeah.
I mean, that's not impossible because
no,
my mom maintained the garden on her place till she was 93 and she passed away. Did it all by herself, but she irrigated probably almost a half acre of a garden.
Yeah.
Out there at daylight every morning, working on it before it got too hot and everything. But that was a big job watering that, because I'd go down there and stay a couple of weeks and seem like I was always moving the hose.
Yeah.
And with a poor little water well, I mean, that well wasn't worth. They probably had a half a stream out of a 1-inch hose, you know. So,
well, we're lucky to have Norco's municipal water supply.
but you will water it off
Yeah.
of the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, you'll have good pressure and everything.
Oh, yeah.
there. But I just know it's a lot of work. And glad to see you doing it, because it gives Ron something to do.
Yeah.
Back
Keeps him out
there.
of trouble.
He advertises his labor on social media. All right, sir. Thank
right.
you much.
Thank you.
I support your program, because
We appreciate it very
nothing
much.
better than fresh vegetables.
That's right.
Thank you.
Councilmember Newman.
So, Chris, to your comments that, if you remember, a while ago, you and Patrick and I, and also Ted, sat down and we had a good visit. And I think that I'd made it clear at that time, as was hoped tonight, was that certainly support your program. And I don't think, I think you knew where I was coming from. And just leave it at, we had a good conversation about that. And you had my support. But sometimes I look at this through a different lens, all right? And I'm going to make a little variation on a quote that Catherine uses at times. Not that I always listen to you, but sometimes it's.
Didn't your mommy teach you if you didn't have anything nice to say, just not
Some-
to say anything at all? Like, seriously.
Oh, no, I didn't mean it in a bad way. It was that what you said was, no offense, that sometimes it's not about the person, but the process. And so I'm just kind of looking at the dollar side of this. And I want to see you be successful with it. But in my reality is that not many people will lend $1 million at no interest. Okay. And these are public funds. And I know that we have this money for economic development. We could leave that $1 million just sitting in a treasury account right now and make 5% on it. So I just want you to know where I'm coming from on my vote. And it's strictly on my concerns with revenues and that amount of money and what we're looking, I think, in the future economically. But I wish you luck. You'll do good. Thank you.
All right, so to finish up, I'll share my comments. I hope that it's obvious that I support agriculture in the community and what we're doing with the program. I completely understand the dollars and cents, right, that Councilman Newton is talking about. But Norco has always, at least from what I can remember, been a community that is willing to take risks when it's the right thing to do, when we're protecting a lifestyle and we're staying true to what we stand for. I talked about when we had the auction the other day, like Norco doesn't just talk about stuff, we do stuff. And I talked about how we value our veterans and we built a memorial with all donations. We value the Western lifestyle. We have 2 arenas and events there all the time. We value agriculture and small plot agriculture and involving people in that way of life. And so again, it's about not just saying those things, but it's doing those things. So we have the barn, and the barn is going to serve a multitude of purposes. When I look at this $1 million investment, it's about protecting this community in perpetuity. And so if we take that money and divide it along 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of protection, for me, that's a small price to pay for what we're trying to accomplish. And I think about the fact that, and Patrick mentioned it, how he talks to people throughout the state and they're like, wow, there's something happening in Norco. And that is real. You can go to all over the state and people do know Norco, and it's for a reason. It's for our horses. It's for our ability to protect our lifestyle. It's for the agricultural thing. And that movement that Patrick's talking about, it's only going to get bigger, because I can see a time when we talk about Norco being a destination, agritourism is a big thing and it's real. And as people get connected to it, they will go to those places, and it will be someplace where Norco people can come to Norco and they can learn new farming skills, or they can see how different ranches are set up. It's like the California or the Norco ranch tour that we have, but on a bigger scale for the whole state, where what we have in Norco is a model for other places to replicate. And so when we look at using public funds and what we're trying to do here, for me, it's 100% justifiable, because we are backing up what we say with action, and we're putting our money where our mouth is. And so if agriculture is important and protecting the large lots and protecting the lifestyle is important, then this is where, again, I think our money should be. Is there a risk? Absolutely. Could something happen and Chris and Patrick, make a bad decision, or can some event happen? Absolutely it can. But that's no different than any other decision we make on any other given day. So for me, we've had a relationship with Five Keys and Chris and Patrick. It's been bumpy. There's been a few bumps. I think both of them would concur with that. But we've been able to come to the table. We've been able to work through those. I'm sure there'll be a few more bumps in the road. That's just the nature of getting people together and trying to get on the same path. But I personally am willing to take the risk, again, to protect our community and our lifestyle. And you know what? If it bites me in the rear, I don't think there's anybody that could say, making this decision, oh, well, that Robin Grunmeyer, goodness gracious, that was the stupidest thing she's done. I mean, there's a whole list, right? But I don't think there's any justification for saying that we're making a decision that we're not trying to look out for the best interest of our residents in Norco at the end of the day. So for me, yes, $1 million, holy cow, that's a lot of money. But we're trying to protect a place that is known statewide and it's special and there's a reason why it's like that. So I'm willing to take the risk.
One more question there. You mentioned something that I don't know who you'd see, but on the ranch tour, any way that they could add this to the ranch tour, let people know what about the property and everything. I mean, I think it's a good thing that people get to see what's growing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll volunteer them. They probably need a year or two, and I know Jules is in charge of the ranch tour and she's always looking for new places. Was super impressed this year that they added some farms. It's been primarily equestrian based in the past. So I don't think that'll be a problem at all. And honestly, I can see where, 5 Keys and that some of these other farms in Norco that have developed out of the EATS program will be listed on the agritourism site for California that's run through UC Davis. And people, like when I travel with my students and I'm going somewhere, I look on that website. What can we do? We've been to catfish farms and the kids have been down in the ponds with catfish. We've been to goat farms and tree orchards and all kinds of cool stuff. And it's all listed on this website. And I can see a time where there's 12 or 15 places in Norco for people to come when they want to have those kind of field trips and those kind of experiences. So I'm going to volunteer them for that too. But yeah, so that's kind of just, again, Norco's risk takers. That's what we are. That's what we do. And so, Kevin says Norco luck. I say it probably has something to do with that over there as well. But, we're here to do the work and make the hard decisions and 100%. So
Ready for a motion?
heck yes, I am.
I make a motion to approve.
Please vote. Motion approved with Councilmember Newton voting no.
All right, very good. We are coming to the end of our meeting. Our next item is our staff communication. So city staff, anything? Oh, Amanda. Ooh, she's getting up, coming to the podium.
Good evening, City Council. Someone's sitting next to me tonight, and so I'm going to introduce her. Her name is Galilea Rios. She's our new fellow from the Civic Spark program as part of the Federal AmeriCorps program. Galilea is from Orange County and holds a degree in political science. She has a deep-seated passion for the intricate dynamics of local governance, policy formulation, legislative process, and the pursuit of environmental justice. She will be with us for the next year to assist in the implementation of vital energy projects. And just a disclaimer, she's being compensated by the Inland Regional Energy Network, so it's not funded by the city of Norco. But Bella, do you want to come up and?
Evening. So my name is Galilea. I joined Civic Sparks because, as Amanda mentioned, I'm just very passionate about environmental justice and law. I really want to become a lawyer one day or do politics. My parents are originally from Mexico. They're also from a little ranch. So working here at Norco just means like bringing back like part of my culture and my identity and like who I am. But yeah, thank you.
So Mayor, we're really happy to be part of the WRCOG's IREN program, and IREN is offered fellows. And so we raised our hand and said we would love to host a fellow here at Norco. So Mayor Pro Tem Besh has been very involved in the IREN program. And
Love this program. Where'd you go to school?
UCR.
Hey, good. I'm an alumni of UCR. It's cool.
Well, welcome. All right, city attorney, anything?
You're wonderful.
Thank you. Best meeting ever, right? City manager. All right. Berwin, anything?
Yes. Excuse me, Amanda. Did somebody kidnap our water truck? The other day when I was going up to meet you at the barn for the tour, I think I met the water truck.
Again, we did make some repairs to it. It's back now. We are in the process of going out to, for notice of inviting bid for a new truck.
I knew we'd talk about it, but I forgot to ask you that day about the truck. It died, had to take a ride.
Yeah,
Okay.
every so often you'll see it in a tow truck going on 6th Street. So, yeah, until we get a new one. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Greg, anything?
I'd like to hear Berwin's comment about what to do with that old water truck, but
Since this is Horsetown, USA, we cut the cab off of it, hitch a couple of horses to it. We're not ruining the environment with the diesel or anything like that. We got plenty of people in town that's got horses and they can drive it and water everything they need to. Thank you.
Councilmember Alleman. Mayor Pro Tem Bash. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Meeting is adjourned, 9:54.